Welcome everyone to Reconstruct Your Ancestors' Lives with Google.
It hasn't started yet.
Oh,
Wait till the session comes up. I'll say live.
thanks.
Live.
Welcome everyone to Reconstruct Your Ancestors' World with Google, or Reconstruct Your Ancestors' Lives with Google by Lisa Louise Cook. A few reminders: this session is being recorded, so you can watch it later here on rootstech.org. And if you have any questions, there's a join chat room button a little ways down the page. Feel free to ask questions and we'll get to those near the end of the class. And also there is a syllabus if you scroll a little farther down on the page that you can download and look at as well. So with that, I will turn the time over to Lisa Louise Cook.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here at Roots Tech. I am really happy that you're joining me here today because we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is reconstructing your ancestors' world. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing to not just find names and dates, but to really reconstruct their world, to learn more about their lives and the details of their story. And that's what we're trying to do, is pull that story together. Now, you might already know about me, if you recognize my name, that I have a YouTube channel. It's called Genealogy Gems. There's a big YouTube channel over there. And we also have been doing the Genealogy Gems podcast for about 17 years now, which is amazing to me. And I'm also the author of the book, The Genealogist Google Toolbox. This is in its third edition because Google keeps evolving. And so you may have seen that. So this is really an area of passion and interest to me. But there might be some things that you don't know about me. I do cake decorating, and I have been doing it since well before doing any of this professional genealogy. I started when my youngest daughter was first born, and it's so much fun. In fact, I can make specialty cakes for their birthdays and my grandkids, and my daughter was a softball player, so I had to make a mitt, of course. Cake decorating is really fun. It's artistic, and what's awesome about it is that it gets eaten. So my house isn't filled with all my attempts at artwork. It's all in my family's tummy. But the thing about cake decorating is that the right tools really make the difference. You could be very artistic, you could have wonderful ideas, but your cakes might look like the one here on the right-hand side if you don't have the right tools. So some of it is, ability and technique, and some of it is just the right stuff. You got to have the tips and the spatulas and the right mixer and all that kind of stuff. It just makes a huge difference. Well, having the right tools for genealogy is the same thing. It makes all the difference. It means you'll spend a lot less time searching aimlessly, trying to find something and just giving up in frustration, and more time really learning about your ancestors' lives. So that's our goal here today. You might use Google on a regular basis. I don't know if you use it for genealogy. You should be. I think you will be after this class. But it's really easy to get frustrated and overwhelmed by a lot of irrelevant results if you don't quite know the right tools to use to speak Google's language so it can give you the best results. So Google is certainly one of those tools. And within Google, there's kind of a toolbox. Hence why I named my book about the toolbox, because there's several different key tools within Google that are tremendous resources for genealogists. We're going to be talking about things like Google Images, Google Scholar, Google Books, YouTube. We all spend a lot of time on YouTube these days, and it's an amazing resource for family history. And we'll touch on Google Earth as well. So in this session, what we're going to do is identify what you already have. What do you know about your family that we can kind of capitalize and jump off of? And then we're going to use these Google tools to flesh out the details of their story, really bring some richness to it. And again, in the end, we're hoping we're going to be able to tell a richer, more complete story, one that is riveting to our family members who maybe even aren't genealogists. They're not so interested in looking at a census record, but they would be interested in hearing the real stories. So what we're going to do is start by turning to what you already have. So in my research, I researched, of course, the Cook line, my husband's line, and I have photographs. This is his grandfather, Raymond Cook, and his mother there in the center, Marianne Susanna Munns Cook. And I was so thrilled when I got my hands on that photograph of her from a distant cousin. And on the back were written all of these details. So I've got some good things to work from. And in fact, Raymond in his 90s, I think he was about 94 when he sat down and he wrote about a 12-page autobiography. Now, he was born in England and he immigrated in 1912 through Canada to eventually America. And so he had a really interesting story and interesting life. And I was riveted by reading this text. So one of the first things I did was pull those 12 pieces of paper back out. And I scanned them on my scanner so I could get a digital copy and really work with them. So think about what you might already have. Maybe you've got letters, maybe you've got some stories that were written by family, maybe you have a book, a family history book that was handed down. You probably, or even if you don't have any of those things, you maybe have your family tree or your database, and you're going to be able to go in there and just take a look at what you know so far. In this autobiography, I took the scanned version, which I can, in Adobe, you can change it to just text editing, or you can also sit down with Word and just type it back up, which I think transcribing it yourself is really effective for getting into it. And then I went through and I bolded the areas, what I call the searchables, things that I think that I could learn more about. And they're not necessarily, his birth, death, marriage, that kind of thing, but it's the stuff around his life. Things like where he lived, where he moved to. His father was a blacksmith, and so he worked for Martin Haynes. The street address where they lived in Tunbridge Wells, the fact that it was near a theater. There were just little tidbits in this short autobiography that gave me so many avenues to pursue to learn more about it. So I could really visualize this life that he's talking about. So after you go through the stuff that you have, I'm hoping that you'll come up with a bullet point list. These are the searchables. I've got all my key items that I'm going to try and use. And you're looking for those names, dates, places, events, topics, words you don't recognize, anything like that. And these are going to be our keyword searchables for Google. So as you can see, I had quite a bit of different, eclectic mix of items to choose from. So if you're going to go to Google and you're going to search on some of these things and try to find more, you're going to have to be able to speak Google's language. And Google really does have its own language kind of under the hood. We see the search box and we just type in words. Oftentimes we'll just type in a question or a couple of keywords, but there's a lot more that we can do to help Google truly understand exactly what we want and, most importantly, what we don't want, so that it can discern between the two. So we use search operators to do this. So we're going to take these keywords and add operators. Operators are like punctuation, certain short words that we can use to define our keywords. The first one that I think you could use on a daily basis, I know I do, is quotation marks. So if you put quotation marks around a word or a phrase, it explains to Google that you want that word or phrase on every single result. Have you ever typed in somebody's name or a couple of words and things about a topic, and you might get some things on what you wanted, but there's all kinds of other things, or some of those results don't even include some of the words that you asked for? Well, when you put them in the search box, they weren't mandatory. You're saying, if you can find it, great, or something close. We want exact. So we're explaining to Google, this word must be spelled exactly how I'm spelling it. This phrase must have these words exactly in this order. And anything within quotation marks has to be on the results. that is going to dramatically reduce the number of results that you get. You're not going to get those results where some of the words are there and some of the words are not there. So let's look at an example of this. Here's a photograph of Raymond's father. And in fact, there's Raymond sitting in the car as a young man. He's about 16 years old, I think, there. And this is at his father's motorworks, which was at their home. And he talked about in the autobiography that his father worked for Sir David Solomon, and he was the mayor of Tunbridge Wells. He lived at Broomhill Estate, and he worked on his carriages. And eventually, when Sir David Solomon started bringing automobiles and horseless carriages to Kent in England, wow, that was just earth-shaking. Nobody had had one before. And so Harry started working on those. His father actually became an auto mechanic of sorts. Well, one of the things they did was Sir David Solomon held a horseless carriage exhibition. And Raymond said it was when I was born in 1894. And here's a couple of photographs. One was handed down to me through the family. Another one I actually found on eBay, if you can believe it. So this is pretty exciting. I'm going to go to google.com and I'm going to put in the place, Tunbridge Wells, in quotes. And then I'm going to put one of the key phrases, horseless carriage, because it was called a horseless carriage exhibition. So I'm going to put that phrase in quotes. And then because Sir David's last name, his surname is fairly unique, I went ahead and put that in quotes as well, just the surname, because I don't know if they're going to say Mayor Solomon's or Sir Solomon or Sir David Solomon. You know, we don't want to eliminate results because we didn't say it exactly correctly. If I'm not totally sure how the name's going to appear, I'm going to just use the surname. So I ran this search and it really, really cut down. I didn't get millions of results. I got 522 results. That's amazing. So I clicked through on some of the top results on page 1, and sure enough, here's an article written back in 1996 about horseless carriages. And it talks about that Britain's first motor show was the horseless carriage exhibition that took place in the autumn of 1895. So Raymond was just a year off in his autobiography. And it said that they expected a bunch of cars and that it was at the agricultural showgrounds in Tunbridge Wells. So, wow, already I'm learning so much more about this event. I can start kind of visualizing this event and his father being there. And it was really interesting. It says the horseless carriages in 1895 could break the speed limit only because it was at 4 miles per hour. Oh, okay. So I'm not now visualizing people racing around. It's 4 miles an hour. Well, the next result actually brought me over to Google Books. And here is a magazine. It's called The Hub. And Books has magazines, newspapers, all kinds of good stuff. This was printed in 1895. So I'm really excited about this resource because 1996 was great, but anything printed right around the time this actually happened, wow, that's a source I want to read. And this one had a firsthand account of the actual event. And it talks about, it was held on Tuesday, October 15th. And it talked about who was there and how all the people turned out to see this amazing sight. And it talked about that they didn't get near as many cars as they thought they were going to get. So, I mean, a wonderful, wonderful, rich story. Maybe I don't have Harry Cook here to tell me this story, but I've got somebody who was standing right there who wrote it up in the Hub magazine. Another search operator you could use is the minus sign, because sometimes we got to get rid of things that we don't want, stuff that show up in the results and just kind of clog things up. So this is going to remove unwanted words and phrases. So if you're searching for something and you find that some other word keeps dominating or some other version of that word, like if you had the surname Green, think how many, lawns and John Deere tractors and Kermit the Frogs you might get in your search results if you can't be more specific. So I might want to eliminate some of those by subtracting them out. This showed up in the case of searching for a company that Harry worked for just before he went to work for Sir David Solomon. Raymond says that he worked at Wendover in Huntington, England. So I put Wendover in quotes, carriage in quotes, because at that time he was working on carriages, not motor vehicles, and Huntington. Well, I got 42,000 results. And what I discovered very quickly is there's a Huntington in Canada. And it very much showed up in the results because, Canada and England have close ties. And so they might have been mentioning these other words as well, but I don't want Huntington, Canada. If I just come back and add minus Canada, so you can see here, I've got each of these in quotes. There's a space between each of the exact words, plus I put a space and then minus sign Canada. That minus sign needs to touch the word Canada to make sure that Google knows that's the word we're getting rid of. And look, we're down to 17,000 results. Now, I know you're not going to look at all 17, but the point is we're trying to dramatically reduce the playing field so that page 1 and page 2 of your search results are the best of the best results matching what you want. And sure enough, there were some interesting articles here. I got this article on Windover Carriage Works. It was on George Street in Huntington. And it almost looks like there's like half a picture. It didn't really have the full scan of this page, but it looks like an engraving or a drawing showing that location in Huntington, England. So that is, now I can visualize where Harry was working. Now, here's another search operator. You might not be using this every day like you would be quotes and minus signs, but when you need it, you really need it. And that is the asterisk. The asterisk is going to help us get a little bit of flexibility in those phrases that we're putting in quotes, because sometimes there might be a middle name or a middle initial or another word that comes between the two items. And if we don't know what that word's going to be, or we don't know that every web page is going to have it, the asterisk will hold a spot for it. So here's what that might look like. If I was searching for Raymond's father, Harry Cook, I would put Harry Cook in quotes and then an asterisk in between the two words. Now notice the asterisk doesn't touch either one of the names because we're not doing anything to Cook or to Harry. We're actually holding a spot in between. And then I also added another keyword phrase, Tunbridge Wells, and put that in quotes. And look what we got. So as you get your results, you're going to notice that the words and the phrases that you're searching on are going to show up in bold, which really will flag you, hey, we've got something here, and here's why this is the result that we're giving you. So Google's actually talking back to you, isn't it? I got 69 results, and look at this, Harry R. Cook. That is Raymond's father. That is the first item. And in fact, this was the coroner's inquest of the death of Harry's wife, Mary Ann Susanna Munns in Tunbridge Wells. Now, the next one was Harry Charles Cook. That's not the same guy, but Google did its job. That's okay. There might be times where something else could fit in there. And so don't worry about that. Just scooch on to the next one because it's in bold. It's very easy and quick to notice. You don't even have to click the result to figure out that's not the one that you need. Okay, and the next piece in our operator puzzle is the num range search. And the beauty of this search is that sometimes we need to explain a time frame to Google. And there's not an easy way to do that. But as I was writing my book, I was thinking about, years are numbers. So why couldn't we use the num range search and kind of target years using 4-digit numbers? And it works beautifully. You can specify a time frame by just putting in the year. So we're not doing month and date, just the year. In this one, I did horseless carriage exhibition in quotes, and then Tunbridge in quotes, and 1893 ... 1896. No spaces in there. Those dots connect those years. So we're telling Google the web page needs to have a 4-digit number somewhere on the page that falls within this number range. And of course, thankfully, and when it comes to genealogy and history, we have lots of years that show up on web pages. So this is going to really help. And indeed, look at my first result, the horseless carriage exhibition, Grace's Guide from 1895, talks about the mayor of Tunbridge Wells. Oh my goodness. When you think about how much is on the internet and how hard it is to get that needle in the haystack, you can see the power of these operators, how they're going to drive you right to these amazing gems that weren't popping up before. But look at what else is so interesting on this results page. The photographs, do you recognize them? That looks like the picture that I got from eBay years and years ago. And there's different variations here. So this one, I thought, oh my gosh, it's the same picture. It's in black and white, but actually it's not exactly the same picture. It is slightly from a different angle. This clues me in. There were more photos taken at this event, and they are starting to pop up online. And this one actually has Sir David Solomon's Peugeot vehicle written on it. So I've got some clues here that are telling me I need to pursue this. There are probably so many more photographs. And look, Harry appears in both of them. He's, standing right next to the car. He's in charge of that car. And there is Sir David Solomon right next to him with the bowler hat and the mustache. Look, I guess they all have those sort of. Sir David's on the left in the photograph that I have. But this is exciting. Google is finding images that also match. So how do we search on one day, and then what if next week somebody else starts uploading more photographs from that event? We don't have every day, all day to be doing the same Google searches over and over, do we? Here is another way to speed up your search. And for me, that's really key. I want to, as quickly as possible, get to the very best results. That's always my goal. And so I've really nailed down some good searches in this day of searching. I want that to continue. I don't have time. You probably don't. So we're going to use Google Alerts. This is another one of those wonderful tools. And you need a free Google account to use it, but you can go to google.com/alerts, and it's going to run these searches for you. So when you log in with your free Google account and you've run your search and you've looked at your results, copy that search query that you created and put it in the search box. Here you can see I searched for Harry Cook in quotes with Tunbridge Wells in quotes, and that worked really well. I'm going to create an alert. So I paste it into this field and click Create Alert. This, my friends, is like the shaky leaf hint of the internet. We really enjoy our hints on genealogy websites, where it's constantly finding new things and tying it into our family tree. But how in the world do you do that when who knows where other information is coming from? It could be archives or libraries or a distant cousin or just somebody who's into motor cars and they're talking about this, or somebody inherited a photo album. They don't even know what this event was, but they start digitizing it and putting it online. When those things pop up on the internet, you want Google to alert you, and that's exactly what it's going to do. So it's going to run your search 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's going to alert you with an email to say, hey, we found a new result, or we found an updated web page on this topic. So Google's going to assume that you've already run the search and looked at the initial results, and now it's going to pick up anything new that comes up after that. So right there, I hope that you put that into practice right away today, and you're going to save so much time and find so many gems. Okay, let's talk about Google image search, because it sure was exciting to find that additional photograph of that event. You could go to images.google.com. That is a specific landing page for Google image search. You can certainly do that search from the main google.com website, but I like using the actual landing page for Google image search for a couple of reasons. I'll show you. It provides a very targeted search just for images. So that's the first thing. It's also all types of images, whether it's a map or a photo or a drawing or anything like that, any kind of digital image. And it's going to find it no matter where it is on the web. So we're not just going to stay in our genealogy sphere. We are going to bust out and go anywhere where there is information about our family. So here is Google.com's landing page, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you can click images, and that's going to take you to this dedicated image search page. Looks like this. Now, notice this has a microphone button, a Google Lens button, which is also an image photo button, and then search. So I'm going to put in Windover, which was the name of that company that Harry once worked for that Raymond put in his autobiography, and Carriage and Huntington. Notice you don't always have to put quotes. So there's going to be times where you think, well, if it has that word, I'd like that to be a priority in my results list, but I'm not making it mandatory because I don't know for sure that that word is critical. So you can play with quotation marks on, off, see what works best. If I run this search, I'm going to get just images in my results. And do you notice something very quickly? I'm seeing the full shot of that half image we saw on that article. Remember the article we saw about the Windover and Windover works in Huntington? And I see a couple of versions. I see what look like black and white copies and those kind of sepia tone ones that look really original. If we click through, look at this. This is the original pattern book of the coach builders. And it's got drawings of all the locations where Windover and Windover had facilities. So the pattern for building the coach is in this book. And I've got this beautiful full image of what George Street in Huntington looked like back then in the day. And the exact location, look at the building there. It's got written on it, Windover and Company. This is where Harry would have walked to work. Maybe he's one of those gentlemen they've drawn in the picture. I mean, how exciting to be able to have an image like this and incorporate it into your storytelling. Now, remember when we did the search for Windover and Carriage and Huntington, and I had to subtract the word Canada? Well, if you ran that search and you looked at the web results, you could also at google.com just click image results. And again, you're going to get just images coming off of web pages and images that are posted online that meet your criteria. And again, we can see that we find them that way as well. But as I said, this is not limited to photographs. So really expand your thinking when you're looking at your searchable terms. How about maps and drawings and paintings and old postcards? Oh gosh, of some of these locations, charts and graphs and clip art, it is limitless what you can find. Here's just a smattering of what I have found. Brampton is where Raymond's father, Harry Cook, was born. And this is pictures of the cottages, what they looked like at that time, the village green. Hinchingbrook House was a place where he forged all the gates when he first became a blacksmith. So I wanted to see what that looked like. The Huntingtonshire Bridge. This was the bridge that his wife, Marianne, ran across to get to the blacksmithy to tell Harry, hey, I just saw a sign and Windover is hiring in Huntington. Raymond talked about that. And here I'm looking at the bridge. And then eventually, Harry moves his family to Tunbridge Wells, where he works for Sir David Solomon, and that's where the exhibition happens. Well, I found postcards of this Tunbridge Wells Opera House. Raymond said they lived just around the corner, and it was newly built, and his mother played the viola in the orchestra. So really quickly, I am visualizing his story. And I think that's going to be so much more interesting to my family, who is not as excited about the documents themselves. Now, you might be wondering about copyright. That is an important question. It varies with each image. So first, you can always check with the website owner. Typically, people will have some kind of contact, link or button. And you could say, hey, I found this on your website. And if it's not clearly marked that it's fine to use, you could ask permission. You can also go to copyright.gov and read up on some guidance on what you can and can't use online, particularly when it comes to older images that might be more in the public domain. You can also, when you're running your Google search, this is kind of interesting. I'm in image search. You can use the tools button on the results page and filter by copyright. So you'll notice that right here, once you run the search, you have to run it first. And then you'll get this tools button on the results page. You click that, and one of the filters that will show up in a pop-up menu, a secondary menu, is it says usage rights. So you can filter it by, whether you want to use it for non-commercial reuse, which might be in your case if you want to put it in your family history story. A commercial use might be if you wanted to put it in your family history book, but you want to publish that and sell it on Amazon. Well, then that would be more of a commercial use. So you can filter by that. Now, the thing to keep in mind with this is that not everybody who posts images online actually indicate what their copyright restrictions are. So just because it doesn't show up in the filtered list doesn't mean you couldn't use it or that it's not available. So you have to use your best judgment based on where it's coming from. If it's coming from Google Books or some place like that that has already checked copyright, they wouldn't publish it if it's not already in public domain or copyright free. So depending on the source, Wikimedia Commons is also the same way. They'll have all kinds of great images, but they've already checked it for you, so you can still use it. So lots of different avenues to make sure that you're definitely working within the guidelines and rules of copyright. So here, let's click images. And here we are at the image page. I'm going to type in Tunbridge Wells. And let's see what a live search. Okay, so I got all kinds of Tunbridge Wells images, but most of these look really modern, don't they? They're full color. So let's click the camera icon. Sometimes they'll look at it like a Google Lens icon. And I could paste a URL if I had a photograph already online, but I don't. I've got it on my computer. I'm going to click upload it, choose the file, and I'm going to grab that picture right off my computer and upload it. Now, I'm not publishing it to Google, but I'm asking Google to search it. So what I see here is that first and foremost, Google figures out, oh, this is a vintage car. So when you click that, look at how closely they match. They're all the same tone of color. They're all vintage cars. They're all older. I'm going to change vintage car, which is what Google came up with, and I'm going to type in Tunbridge Wells and see what happens. Now I'm finding images, and just because of the color tone itself, I'm typically finding them from around the same time frame. So this is a rabbit hole I enjoyed falling down. I mean, look at all the images here, so many streets and people and buildings, and it pulls them from all over the internet. Oh, I don't have to go digging site by site. I'm looking and using pictures. Check this one out. So who knows? Who knew that Tunbridge Wells had a goat problem? I don't know. It looks like they've kind of taken over the town. You can click visit and you can go see what website is this coming from. Homegrown tourists help unlock the heritage gems. And this had a whole bunch of information about Tunbridge Wells at that time. It had old photographs. So, images can lead to websites, which lead to BSOs with the bright, shiny objects that are definitely going to attract your attention. So just don't let it take you too far away from your search goals, but it's awfully fun to use images to help draw you into some areas that maybe you would never have found otherwise. So you can upload images from your computer onto Google. If that interests you and excites you, and if you like images and you want to find out more about, facial recognition and how to find copies of pictures or more pictures of the same item, go check out my video on my YouTube channel. It's called Google Images Best Search Strategies. And we spend a bunch of time digging into all the specifics around that. And you can find that at my YouTube channel or at my website. And that's free, and it will teach you so much more about how to do that. But we need to move on because we're going to get into another tool, and that tool is Google Books. And again, just like images, Google Books has its own dedicated web page, which is really nice because it's built just for working with the book collection. You'll find it at books.google.com. Now, book search, you can get book results if you do a google.com search. But I like going to Google Books itself and just focusing on book results. And let me kind of change that up a little bit. Don't think of Google Books as just books. It should be named Google Printed Materials, because it's really not limited to books. They have newspapers. They've moved a lot of the newspapers from the old Google News Archive onto there. They have magazines. You saw the Hub magazine. In fact, they have all 20 years, I think, of the Ancestor magazine digitized on there. They have almanacs, catalogs, court records, any printed material that they could get their hands on that could be digitized. And if it has been cleared of copyright, if it's in the public domain, which thankfully a lot of the older materials that we're interested in as genealogists is indeed in the public domain, well, that means it's digitized. And they apply optical character recognition, OCR, to the digitized materials. Now that's unique. They don't do that to websites, but that makes all of this printed material keyword searchable. And we have our list of keywords, right? So one of the things I thought would be interesting to search for in Google Books was information about Raymond's mother. And he had such fond memories of her, and she died when he was about 13 years old. So I don't have a lot of information about her. And her name was Mary Ann Susanna Munns. But one of the things that Raymond said in his autobiography was that her father was Reverend John William Munns. Okay, well, I wonder if he published anything or if anybody talked about him. So I might just start with a general open-ended Reverend John William Munns. I'm not using quotes or anything yet. I might go back and do that if I get too many results. Well, I got a lot. I got 21,000 results, which is not a surprise. However, thanks to OCR, look how accurate Google Books was in finding. It focused on the entire phrase first, and then it starts distilling down and looking for shorter versions of it. And my first two items here, Reverend John William Munns. So that is pretty cool. If I had put quotation marks around it, two results, the same result. So those are the only two books that had the exact name in full. But it doesn't mean there isn't a Reverend Munns or Reverend John Munns. And we might go in and start adding location and other things. So you can see we need to mix and match the information, the keywords we have, along with the search operators. If I click through on this, I see that this is a post office directory of Birmingham. And of course, my first thought was Birmingham. That's a long way from Kent. I don't know. But I actually have a spot in his timeline where he's kind of missing. He goes AWOL. I don't know where he's at. And I haven't been able to find records to account for his time. And here it lists that he was at Smethwick Hall. Well, what is Smethwick Hall? Not a lot of detail in this book. However, I could come back to my Google search and do Smethwick Hall in quotes. And I'm just going to put Munns in quotes because I figured that's a unique enough surname, maybe not as much in England, but it's unique enough that I could start there and not try to put his whole name. And sure enough, that same directory shows up, but I also see a couple of other things. I see Smethwick, other estates. This is a British history website, talks about a Baptist minister called Munns. If I had put his whole name in quotes, I would never have got that. And he was a Baptist minister, which was a little more unusual. He wasn't Church of England. Clicked through and check this out. It talks about that Mr. Munns, a Baptist minister, eventually bought the school, which he ran until the 1880s. So he went up to the Birmingham area. He runs a school at Smethwick Hall. Oh my gosh, he didn't go to Mars for 10 years and then come back. He actually went somewhere else, and I finally found it. Do you have somebody like that in your tree where you're just like, did he fall off the earth and then come back on? I mean, what happened? Well, you can find it this way. We hope. More gems at Google Earth, or Google Books. So I was looking at, I have this apprenticeship record for when Harry became a blacksmith. when he was a teenager. And it's signed by Martin Haynes. So I thought, okay, that's another searchable. He mentioned Martin Haynes in that autobiography. I did Huntingtonshire in quotes, blacksmith in quotes, Martin Haynes, and I put that asterisk in between because I don't know if they're going to mention a middle name or not, or Haynes Martin. Now there's a new operator for you. And these are all in your handout. The or is not punctuation, but it's a short word. It's just in capital letters. Normally capitalization does not matter online. But in this case, you're flagging Google. Hey, wait a second. This is an operator and I want websites that have to have either Martin Haynes or Haynes Martin. So you could see when we do research, aren't you finding lots of lists of information about people, but by last name first? And if we are putting things in quotes, but it's first name first, we're not going to get those. So the or operator does a tremendous job giving us that flexibility. And sure enough, I got this same directory for Bedfordshire and Hunts, Martin Haynes, a blacksmith. I click through. It's the town of Brampton. This is where Harry was born and where he first became a blacksmith. And it does mention Martin. And he's listed Haynes Martin blacksmith. It worked like a charm. We just have to know how to talk Google's language, right? So if you want to learn more about Google Books, again, this is probably the website I use every single day. Seriously, there's 10 million or more digitized materials on there. Go check out this video again on my website and on my YouTube channel. 10 surprising things that you're going to find. I really want to expand your thinking about what you're looking for and the possibilities that are out there because it's exciting. All right, Google Scholar is our next one, and their landing page is scholar.google.com. So this allows you to just Google search scholarly literature. It explores related works. It has citations, authors, publications, and best of all, Google Alerts is built right into Google Scholar. So if you're really interested in works that have source citations that come from trusted and known historical researchers, you might want to just target this for an afternoon and see what you can find over at Google Scholar very specifically. So let's take a look. What it's going to do is it's going to restrict your research to things like court records, materials coming out of universities. Lots of universities, they'll get archives of people's collections, academic publishers, and other scholarly content providers. When you're searching, the good news is all the Google tools support all these techniques and these operators that I've been talking with you about today. So the under the hood, the search engine is kind of the same, and you can still speak to Google exactly the same way. You don't have to think about it differently in each one of these tools. And follow the source citations that they give you because it's going to lead you to other relevant sources, which is kind of exciting. So if I run a search for horseless carriage in quotes and David Solomon, I got 5 results, but they're all really, really good. And here down on the left-hand column, I can click Create Alert. So I found these today, but you can imagine with scholarly works, there's going to be stuff publishing all the time. So I'm going to check these out and I'm going to create my alert. It's going to prompt me to sign in, make sure I'm signed in my Google account, and it will continue to run just Google Scholar searches for me on this topic. So that's going to be a huge time saver. All right, let's move into another Google tool, which truly has become one of my favorites, particularly in family history, and that is YouTube. Now, back in 2006, Google bought YouTube. So now this is one of the Google tools, which means that the search engine is under the hood, right? And we can use these same operators. And believe me, we've talked about, I think, 4 or 5 different search operators. There are many more. I talk about them in detail in my book. I'm showing you the ones I think that you're going to be able to use most often on a regular basis. But if you want the full range of those, we go into more detail on that in the book. But I think you'll be able to use these every day, and you can certainly use them in YouTube. It is the world's most popular video channel. Consider this: 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. It is by far the fastest growing content online, and really people are consuming it more than ever. So what could be out there? Anything and everything, truly. I want to just show you some examples.
These days, inn signs are merely a
Tunbridge
form of almost
wells,
incidental
horses
decoration.
and carriages.
But at the beginning of the 19th century, they indicated stopping places for stagecoaches, like this famous Tunbridge Wells flyer.
A Tunbridge Wells flyer. This could have been like one of the coaches that
And had the paint
Harry
stripped off
moved to
reveal the
Tunbridge
name,
Wells
the
to
Royal
start
Wells.
building when Wendover and
Seating
Wendover
4
took him
inside
there.
and 14 on top, the coach used to
This
travel regularly
video
between Southwark and
filmed
Tunbridge
back
Wells
in the
via
early
Lewisham,
1950s, I
Bromley,
believe
and
it
Severn.
was. So, this is quite a while ago in itself, let alone it's then going back in history and showing this carriage in working condition. This is pretty cool. When I talk to my grandkids, I want to be able to show them what this looked like and what it was like to ride on top. A very different experience than being in a car.
When he doesn't feel up to such a
So,
comparatively hectic
video
pursuit,
can
he can always
really
relax with
bring
another of
family
his
history
hobbies,
topics to
the
life.
newfangled horseless carriage.
It doesn't have to be your family in the video itself for it to really enrich your story. And when you find something like this that is a nice match, look at what else YouTube is suggesting to you, because it's going to try to suggest more of the same. It knows if you clicked on this and started watching it, you're going to be interested in these other things that might be related. So that can be also a way to kind of capitalize on your success and find more. When it came to Raymond's autobiography, I found things like this on the left-hand side. It was an old Pathé. They were the newsreel company. Oh my gosh, thousands of hours of old newsreel footage. And they have digitized all of it and they put it on YouTube. All the big newsreel companies have done this. So you're going to find a tremendous amount of stuff. And these aren't always famous people that they were filming back then. But in this case, he's really showing how the carriage worked, how you rolled out the steps. In the center, I found this video. This is a blacksmith in Huntingtonshire back in the 1970s. And he's showing the craft of blacksmithing. And specifically, he's creating a carriage. And I thought this was so interesting. My grandson and I were watching this, and they're like, the pattern is drawn on the ground. It's so big. And he's molding his metal and his framework to that pattern that's on the ground. And on the right-hand side, I've got a history of Daimler. Daimler was the inventor of the Mercedes-Benz. And he was friends with Sir David Solomon, and he attended the horseless carriage exhibition. I didn't know anything about him. So finding a documentary on him also provided a tremendous amount of context. And in fact, yes, your ancestors could actually be in somebody else's video. This video is from Oxford, North Carolina. One of my listeners sent this to me, and she said, I was watching this and this man with the crutch walked by, and that's one of her relatives. I think it was her great uncle. Amazing. So he's not named in the title of the video. He's not named in the description of the video. But when she searched on Oxford, North Carolina, and history and old film, and just tried different things like that, just focusing on the location, she finds this film. And what this was there was a guy who owned a movie theater in Oxford, and he would go out on the street and take these silent movies of different people around the town. And he'd say, hey, if you want to come see yourself on the big screen, come on down to the movies on Saturday night. We're going to be showing this film. And these have all been digitized. In fact, I encouraged her. I said, get in touch with this YouTube creator, because chances are if he's got this film, he's got more. And in fact, the title says part 1. And she did. She found many more films and encouraged him. And he actually started getting them up onto his YouTube channel because he knew that there was an interest there. So yes, very exciting using your searchable terms in YouTube to find items. Lots of people are uploading old home movies as well. Now, our final Google tool is really one of my, I say they're one of my favorites. Oh my gosh, they're all my favorites. It depends what you're trying to accomplish, doesn't it? But Google Earth is really an amazing tool for family history. And I think the reason for that is that it's focused on location. And we know when doing genealogy research, we need two prongs of this. We need location and we need time frame. That's going to give us the structure, the context about the people. It might be, Harry Cook, but if he didn't live in this location in this time frame, then that's not the Harry Cook we're looking for, right? So Google Earth is going to help us do that. You can download it if you haven't already. This is free software. So they do have a web version of this, but you don't want to use, in my opinion, I don't use the website. I don't use it in the browser. And I don't use the app on my mobile for what we're talking about here. You really need the full-blown software. It's got all the bells and whistles. It's absolutely free. It's Google Earth Pro, and the link is in your handout. Google Earth used to be available, and there was a free version, and there was like a pro version, which was around $400. But now the pro version is the one and only Google Earth, and it's available to everybody, and it is free. So you download that software. It contains all kinds of geographic data, roads and labels and railways and rivers and historical maps. So that's kind of neat. There are hundreds of historical maps in Google Earth, plus you can create your own map overlays. You can bring other maps into it. It is a wonderful workstation for geographic research when it comes to family history. It allows you to create HD quality images. You can take a screenshot that's HD, and you can also film. So if you're creating a tour, I'm going to show you an example of a family history tour I created for Raymond and his family, that you can film it in Google Earth as well. So what are you going to look for when you go on the map? You're going to look for ancestral location names, historical maps. You're going to be able to do things like find what is the address today versus what was the address back then. Here's an example of what I call a family history tour. So based on Raymond's autobiography, I went into Google Earth and I started plotting information about his father. He talked a lot about his father, Harry. So we start here in England, and I put a little marker there so that you can kind of tell what this story is about. And we're going to zoom into the Tunbridge Wells area. So I want to introduce you to Harry. So I put a little camera place mark here in Tunbridge Wells, and when you click it, you get to see a photograph of Harry. And I've got a little bit of information underneath his photograph there. He arrives in 1894 in Tunbridge Wells by train with his family, well, his wife. And so here's the train station. My place mark, I've turned it into a little train icon. And when you click it, you're going to see a digitized copy of a postcard that I got. It's postmarked 1894, and it's the Tunbridge Wells train station. I got that on eBay. My next place mark looks like a movie projector. And when you click it, I've embedded a movie that I found, a video from YouTube. So when you find a YouTube video, you can copy the share code. The embed code is what they call it. It's just a little bit of HTML. You copy it and you paste it in your place mark, and you can display and watch videos right here in your map in the family history tour. They first moved to 5 Mountfield Road. So I have a photograph that I received from a distant cousin many years ago of the Osborne Villa, where Raymond was actually born there. So I've got the photo in there. And then when you jump into Street View, you can actually stand right outside that location and see what it's like today. So Street View is tremendous because you can jump in and out from Street View up to satellite view and just get the full picture. We're going to exit out of Street View and head over to Broomhill Estate. This is the estate of Sir David Solomon. And there's the photograph that we had of Harry and David and Daimler in the big white beard. And I made that place mark icon a wrench to show that's where he worked. And then he moved to 13 Newton Road. And so that's where he opened up his own motor workshop. And I put a little clipping of the census where he says coach builder. And now you can see Raymond is there. So not the whole page, just that little clipping. I really want this to be interesting to my family. And then you can jump back into Street View and go check it out and see what it's like. I went to speak at Who Do You Think You Are Live several years ago in London, and I brought my husband Bill with me. And so we got a chance to go to Tunbridge Wells as well. And when we got there, it was like we'd already been there because we'd already been there in Google Earth. We knew where the pub was, and we knew where the bed and breakfast and the Tunbridge Wells Opera House, and, walking the streets of Street View. So you can see that a family history tour, that's just the beginning. You can add map overlays and all kinds of awesome material to it. So in the end, all of these tools, we've just kind of been able to touch on each one of them and give you some strategies. I'm hoping it's going to help you tell a richer, more complete story. And I think that video is one of the best ways, to communicate these stories to our family. And so I want to share with you how I kind of pulled all these items together that I found through my Google searching to create this little short video that I could share with my family about the story of my father, Harry R. Cook, narrated by Raymond's grandson, my husband, Bill.
On August 23, 1890, my grandfather, Reverend John William Munns, father of Mary Ann Susanna Munns, was minister of the village chapel in Brampton. He performed the wedding ceremony for my mother, who was organist at his chapel, and my father, who was a Sunday school teacher. Shortly after the wedding, Mother was visiting in the town of Huntington and heard of a position being open for a coachsmith and a blacksmith at Windover and Windover. They were coach builders at Huntington. She ran several miles home to Brampton to tell my father. He was the village blacksmith working for Martin Haynes in Brampton, where he had completed his apprenticeship. Dad succeeded in getting the job. Windover and Windover had a very large plant and employed 81 blacksmiths and had 81 forges. They made, among other things, elaborate horse sleighs, which they shipped by boat to Russia. During Dad's apprenticeship, he spent the last 3 years of it hand-forging all the gates at Hinchinbrook Castle, Huntington, the home of Lord Hinchinbrook. The castle had formerly been the home of Oliver Cromwell. After Dad worked in Huntington for a while, they moved him to Tunbridge Wells, where they had a small coach building business. Soon after arriving at Tunbridge Wells, I was born March 6, 1894, at 5 Mountfield Road. It was quite close to the center of town, and only a short walk to the theater where all the big plays, light operas, etc. performed. To supplement Dad's wages, Mother used to rent a room occasionally to some of the actors. Eventually, Windover and Windover decided to close their business, and Dad's friends persuaded him to go into business for himself. 5 or 6 of his old workmates came to work for him, and he did very well, as he was able to retain many of his previous customers. One customer in particular was Sir David Solomons. He had a very large estate on the edge of town called Broomhill. Dad and several of his men would ride their bicycles to Broomhill every day, where they worked on his carriages. One evening, quite late, Sir David phoned Dad from Paris. He told Dad he was buying a French automobile and would bring it across the English Channel the next day. Dad was to go to Dover on the train and meet him. When Dad met him, it was Dad's job to walk ahead of the auto, a distance of 40 miles. He waved a red flag as a warning to the people driving horses, as the horses became quite frightened by his infernal machine. It was probably one of the first, if not the first, automobile in England. The return to Tunbridge Wells took about 2.5 days, as they were not allowed to travel any faster than a person could walk.
I hope you've enjoyed this session. I hope you're inspired and excited to go find these rich gems for you and your story. Tell your ancestor story. If you want to learn more, come check out my website, and you can sign up for my free newsletter. It's a great way to stay in touch. And we have my book, if you'd like to learn more about Google, and my premium membership, which has everything I teach on video. And so we have our little coupon code there if you'd like to use that over at my website. I hope that you'll leave feedback and let RootsTech know if you enjoyed this session. I sure hope that you did. And you can do that in the app. and lots of ways to stay in touch with me. So I'll invite our moderator back and just see if you guys have any last minute questions on Googling.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa Louise. I have posted some questions in the meeting chat in here in Zoom if you want to look over some of those. And
I don't see any questions in chat.
Why don't you go ahead and read some of them back to her?
Okay, that'd be great.
Let's see. When you use Zotero for your research log, how can you be certain it captures the search algorithm in the research log? I wasn't sure about that.
I don't use Zotero.
Okay.
I'm
Let's go
not
to
sure
another
what
one.
that's about.
Let's see. This is about Google Scholar. Will court records include divorces and naturalization records?
They possibly could. Yeah, that would be definitely something well worth looking for. And if I could think back on the Zotero question, which I'm not familiar with Zotero, if you're talking about, hey, I created a search query, but how do I keep track of that? When you create a Google alert, it's like a bookmark. You can always go into Google Alerts and see all your main searches that you're doing. That's how I track the searches that I run. So maybe that was in the
Nice.
nature of what they were talking about.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, let's see. Someone asking if there are any tutorials on Google Earth Pro.
Absolutely. Yes. My book has, I think, 6 chapters detailing Google Earth Pro and how I use it specifically step by step in genealogy. And also my premium membership has loads of videos, and we go into very specific projects, and they have step-by-step tutorials and handouts.
Okay, awesome. And then I think these last two are kind of the same. How did you use, let's see, does Google Earth Pro let you build a family history tour, or is that something you created on your own?
I created it on my own. So I'm using all the tools within Google Earth. And the tour was something I kind of developed myself back when I wrote the first version of the book. And I just see it's such a great tool for doing that. But I'll show you how to make the folders, create the projects, put all the place marks, add the custom maps and all that kind of stuff. But it's really something that we develop and build for ourselves as genealogists. And they're super easy to email and share with your friends and family. And most people have Google Earth on their computer so they can look at it.
Yeah. Great. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then there are a few that are kind of similar. What did you use to build that video?
Oh, the video. I believe for that one, I used a product called Animoto, Animoto. If you go to my website and look under videos for in the story section, I have some links to videos I've done. Some of them are free. I have others that are part of premium membership. Premium membership has a whole series on how to build it step by step, a video that you want, do the storytelling. But Animoto is a great way to create short, quick videos. Adobe also has a video app. And a lot of times I just do it in an app. I do use a product called Camtasia for full-blown video editing on my computer desktop if I really want to do more elaborate videos. So there's lots of different tools. Some are free and some you pay for.
Okay.
But I have a lot of resources on my website about video production.
Great. Okay, well, thank you again so much. And thank you to everyone for joining on in the class today.